Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Heather Denniston. She's trained as a chiropractor. She's an executive coach. She is a global speaker on wellness and resilience and the success that you can have in business when you pay attention to those. Enjoy the conversation with Heather. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today I have the great pleasure speaking with Heather Denniston. She founded a company called WellFit and Fed, which tells exactly what we're going to talk about today. But we're going to talk about resilience. We're going to talk about wellness. We're going to talk about the link between wellness and business success, which is very important.
Yeah.
But Heather, before we start, first of all, thank you again for being here. But you're also a chiropractor by training?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, I practiced for 25 years until I handed the reins of my practice over to two lovely sisters from Wisconsin who are still caring for my patients today. Officially, they're now their patients, but I still have just such great memories of practice and loved it. It was fantastic.
That's awesome. I have a great friend, Mark Sana, who's training a lot of chiropractor in the world. He's also very big on the wellness part. But is this where this love for wellness, this love for the business success and the link with it came from?
You know, I would say flip-flopped. I would say I had some health struggles in early college. I was about 70 pounds overweight. I had 4 different autoimmune disorders. And I realized at one point, if I don't turn this thing around, no one's going to do it for me. And so that started a real passion for understanding how our bodies work, what actual true well-being is. And then I had the misfortune of having my father diagnosed with brain cancer. He then died. My mother then got diagnosed with brain cancer. She survived brain cancer, but died of another cancer. And so then most people think, oh, you're so interested because you want to make sure you don't ever get cancer. And of course, that's one of it. But really much deeper than that is we have no playbook on when things are going to be over for us. And so we have to enjoy every single minute to the most. And my opinion is the only way we can do that is if we are functioning at our most optimal level from a nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, relationship standpoint. And if we can focus on that, then we have an incredible life experience.
You just say something that I thought was very interesting. You say true wellness. So what is true wellness? Because it's a word that I hear everywhere. What is for you true wellness, and how can someone reach it?
Yeah, it has become diluted. You're absolutely right. And I like Peter Attia wrote a book called Outlive, and in it, he talks about the difference between lifespan and health span. And we talk a lot about like lifespan. How can we make our lives longer? How can we live till older? Well, who wants to do that if you're not functioning where you can go and get on the ground with your grandkids or you can hike to see a sunset? So well-being to me is all about health span, about how can we stay not just functional, but optimal for as long as possible so that we can engage conversationally, relationally, emotionally, physically for as long as possible. So that's more what I see well-being as, is how can we age in a way that we have full access, full agency, full discretion of our time, where we live, the activities we choose to do. So that's well-being, in my opinion.
I love it. Absolutely. When you're speaking with business owners or people in corporations, because you're also an executive coach, right, for large companies, what do you see as the main challenge today, and what do you suggest for them to act so that they basically improve their wellness?
Yeah, Eric, when I was in practice, my practice was located in and outside Seattle, and my patients on the table were Microsoft, Costco, Expedia, T-Mobile, Amazon, corporate employees. And they'd arrive on my table so burnt out, so overwhelmed, functioning at just a glimmer of what they could be functioning at. And I just realized, man, there is a disconnect here. We work so hard, and yet we're not taking care of ourselves. And so what I realized is I can't put out the fires for corporate employees, event planners, for anyone. I can't change what your work environment is, but I can change how you show up to that fire. So instead of showing up in Bermuda shorts and a backpack, I can actually equip you with the right gear and the right tools. And so that's where I can create that bridge between your personal well-being and your professional success. How we show up, we're our greatest asset. How we show up affects how we progress professionally, how much we enjoy our jobs, how we connect at work, how successful we are at work. It's deeply and intimately connected.
Well, I'm listening to you, and it seems so obvious to me. Now, you mentioned names of major company, and I think the list you can add, it's really corporate America.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
how can someone that is in a large organization can cope and block time for their well-being and to take care of themselves if it's not coming from the head of the company who makes it a priority?
Yeah, it's helpful if the corporations are really vested in our well-being, and they need to be, and they're moving in great directions. I was just at a tremendous conference called Work Human, where that is the entire thing, and many great corporations where they're learning how to bring better well-being to work. But it starts with personal responsibility. And for me, when I'm working with clients or I'm speaking from stage, that starts with understanding our deeply moving wellness driver. And that is different for every single person. And so if I said to you, Eric, why do you want to be healthy? Most often people say, oh, well, because I don't know, I want to be independent, I want to be active. But there's always a deeper, more meaningful why behind the reason we want to be healthy. And that's really helpful to pull that out of ourselves first, define that for ourselves, and then creating some self-compassion, because I find when I'm connecting with high performers, often they are the most self-compassionless people. They're very hard on themselves. And so we start there with some of Kristen Neff's work in self-compassion, which is incredibly foundational to any well-being strategy. I will tell you, and tell you the data confirms this, that self-flagellation, shaming isn't going to get us anywhere in our own personal pursuit of well-being. We first have to be kind, be forgiving of ourselves, and we move forward from there. So back to your question, high performers, type A's, stressful environments, what can we do? We start with tiny, consistent shifts made over time for the win. So I would much rather somebody did one tiny little change, but did it daily, than did some grandiose gesture of a 30-day this or a 21-day this kind of program. A tiny shift of, I'm going to drink 2 more glasses of water. And then once I'm drinking 2 more glasses of water, I'm actually going to tackle going to bed 30 minutes earlier. And then once I've tackled that, I'm going to do 5 minutes of deep breathing in the morning. And slowly we layer upon layer really practical, doable solutions that move us in the direction of heightened well-being.
I was smiling because I was thinking about sleeping more. So I've been a roller coaster with my weight on my life. And I always say, with all the pounds I've lost, I don't exist anymore. But now I'm in a I'm in a phase getting better. So that's great. But one thing that I never thought of, and I was told by the people I'm working with now, they said, you need to sleep more because sleeping helps you lose weight. And I went like, what? Explain a little bit how that works.
Well, I'll explain to the degree I have knowledge about that specific thing. And that is that when we sleep, that's our restorative time. Our metabolism is working away. And when we aren't, and we get back out of fight or flight into more of our parasympathetic nervous system, which is where our healing starts. And so when we're getting really nice, high quality sleep, we wake up and we're functioning at a higher level, energy burns differently, how we process our food, digest and absorb it works differently. And so sleep 100% we know has huge benefit to those who are working on a weight maintenance program. And it has a lot to do with our cortisol and our adrenal glands and that kind of thing. I can't speak authoritatively on all of that, but that's how I understand the connection there. And I've seen that true for myself. I know when my sleep is sacrificed, I see the weight creep on just a little bit. And it's just simply an exchange of the cortisol doesn't get a chance to calm down at night. And so we're living in a deficit.
Wow, very interesting. And it works indeed. One thing I'd like to go back to what you said earlier on in your career. you said you had autoimmune disease. You said you had weight to lose. What was the click in your mind that trigger action? And how do you sustain that action? Because I'm speaking with people on other topics, treating cancer and disease, that people know what they should be doing and still they don't do it.
Yeah. So I think there's two questions in there. I'll answer the first, which is what was my trigger? And I can tell you very specifically, I was 21 years old. I was standing in my crappy college apartment shower, crying my eyes out because I was so overweight and I felt awful. And I realized at 21, I'm hitting wellness rock bottom. 21. And I thought, as I mentioned earlier, I thought I have to arm myself with the knowledge and resources because no one's going to do this for me. And I don't know what to do. Basically, eat better, move more. But beyond that, I didn't have the tools. And so that triggered for me a lifelong journey of educating myself around what is true well-being? What are as Tim Ferriss says, what's the minimal effective dose of things that we can do and implement to give us the best return on the investment? And so I started testing on myself. And then when I became a chiropractor, I got the great opportunity to practice with thousands of patients of, how does this work? How does this work? Great. Okay, good return on investment there. The second part of the question is, you mentioned we know what to do. To a degree, we do. And so the question is, so why don't we? And it comes back to, we don't understand the value and we don't have a deeply moving reason behind why we want to be well that takes the place of motivation when motivation disappears. Because we know motivation is a short-term solution and it exhausts easily. And then we're like, forget it, I'm not going to do this anymore. And so what takes the place of that early motivation that we have? Well, deeply understanding that your well-being is not about fitting into a bikini, getting into your wedding dress, putting on a great pair of jeans. It is a long-term solution to life experience, joy, accomplishing things, and having later decades that are optimized and that you have agency and independence. It becomes creating that value for yourself, that it's a non-negotiable. I often with patients say, did you brush your teeth this morning? And they'll say, yeah. Are you going to brush your teeth tonight? Yeah. Why? Why would you do that? It takes 10 minutes. Why would you do it? And we understand that somewhere along the line, we so deeply ingrained the value of brushing our teeth, and it doesn't actually have to do with fighting cavities necessarily. It's the longevity of our teeth and the health of our teeth. And so it's a way to say, how can we create that value for ourselves that's non-negotiable and doesn't get just knocked to the back of the line when something more urgent comes ahead? And I think that's really key. And it's a journey. I didn't turn this Titanic around in 2 seconds. It was a decade-long journey for me to get to a really great space in my own health. And it's constant tinkering. I've just gone through menopause, and menopause is like a baseball bat to the face for many of us women. And so you have to learn again and learn again. And it's the same for anybody reaching different decades. We have to tinker and change what we're doing. It's not set it and forget it. And so it's getting curious about where your health's at, what small changes you can make moving forward, and knowing that you're going to have to keep having that conversation with yourself. What do I need to be doing differently now? And I'll leave it there. I'm going on and on.
No, I think it's very interesting. You should not leaving that. It's very interesting. I actually have friends, that female friends that are now speaking about menopause.
Yes.
So yeah, absolutely. I think for any type of health concern anyone would have, it's like success in business is the little thing repeated every time, and there's the habits and the consistency.
Yeah. Well, and speaking about habits, that was a big thing that came to my attention with early in practice. Is I'd get all excited about these ideas I had for patients. I'm like, let's do this food plan, let's do this exercise plan, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. And 2 weeks later, they'd come back. I'm like, how's it going? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get on that. And I think, what are they not trying? Are they not putting in the effort? And it wasn't that at all. It's that they didn't understand how to implement habits successfully, scientifically proved ways to implement habits, because we can want to eat differently, But as, oh my goodness, James Clear talks about in Atomic
Yeah.
Habits, we will not rise to the level of our goals, we'll fall to the level of our systems. And so once we decide the direction we want to go, it's systems, environment, systems, environment, systems, environment. And that was a big piece that was missing from those of my patients who did not succeed and those who did.
Yeah, the system in place. My personal system includes accountability buddy. And so every Monday, Greg and I are connecting for years now. And again, I'm listening to what you're saying. It can apply to wellness. You can apply it to business. Yes. It's the system to put in place. And without accountability, the execution won't be as successful.
No, for sure. And whatever accountability looks like, for me, my accountability is a journal. And so I journal every single morning, and that helps hold me accountable. For you, it's an actual person. For somebody else, it might be a group that they want to belong to, but accountability is a key piece. And yeah, I think putting those layers in place of ways to make you successful, environment, accountability, the proper resources, the proper team around you. I talk a lot about a wellness pit crew and designing and curating a group of people around you that are supporting you where you're at right now. Because frankly, I think that we are living in a world that is so extraordinarily filled with chronic stressors, toxins, all sorts of different things. We need a team. We can't do this on our own. So whether that includes a counselor, a trainer, a physical therapist, a coworker who can hold you accountable, whatever it is, we get conscious about designing it, surrounding ourselves with these people, and making sure we're checking in with them. So I love that you mentioned that about your accountability person.
Yeah, and the to your point, the number of disease that are. I just take one example. Yeah. When I was a kid, okay, it was in Belgium, it's different, but still, I wasn't aware of anybody with nuts allergies, and it seems now that it's almost becoming the norm. And there's so many points like that. So you're going back to what type of food you're fed. You have sugars and everything, and so on and so forth. So if one doesn't pay attention to their own health, to your point earlier on, then nobody's going to do it for themselves.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think, if we do nothing and just kind of go with the flow, we're going to the lowest common denominator. So we're eating processed food, we're not moving our bodies, we're watching way too much TV. And so there has to be a heightened consciousness compared to not just 100 years ago, but even 25 years ago. You look at how we spent our time, how we fed ourselves, the level of stress, dramatically different compared to today. And so we have to balance those scales by providing that many more resources and support to ourselves so that we can compassionately equip ourselves and move forward in a way that creates health, vibrance, vitality, so we get to experience life in the most optimized way.
Yeah, experience life in the most optimized way, absolutely. And I'm always laughing the difference with some countries in Europe and here, especially now, it's June, so you're going to have out of office. In France, for instance, we're going to say, I went hiking. Please send me an email back in September. And here is going to be, I'm going through heart surgery today. So bear with me. I'll get back to you in a few hours.
That if you're pulling quotes from this podcast, you should pull that one because that was really, really good. It's very true. And, my husband and I went and lived in Greece for about 6 weeks last year. And it's just so refreshing. And just everyone shops for their food day of, and everything's coming from a local farm, and very few processed things, and fresh air, and lots of fresh, clean oils that you can eat. And oh my goodness, yes. So we just have to be very conscious, but it can be overwhelming. So back to what we talked about before, tiny, consistent shifts made over time, layer upon layer, will move you in a direction of actualized and flourishing health.
Heather, you speak on many stages around those topics. You have this tremendous experience when you mention when you saw so many different people in corporate coming on your table because of the big burnout and everything. And I think it's like obvious for anyone that if you have people that are in better health, then they're more available to work and it's better for the business in general.
Yes.
What have you seen over the course of your career, the last 20 years, when it comes to business and the consciousness of the business owners and the consciousness of the employees when it comes to wellness and what people do? Is there an evolution? Have you seen any difference?
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's some in the positive direction and there's some in the negative direction. What I will say is during the COVID wake-up call, corporations were on heightened awareness of the health and well-being of their teams, and it was beautiful. They were looking for any opportunity to support the well-being of their teams. They were putting resources toward it. They were bringing in speakers and programs and all sorts of things. It was fantastic. What I will tell you is, from a speaker standpoint, who I speak on well-being almost exclusively, there has been a shift where now leaders are like, oh, no, we're good. We're good now, right? And we have never come out of a pandemic as a people. We do not know the long-term effects, and people are more stressed than they were going into the pandemic. Hands down, there's just no question. I was just attending a lecture from a Gallup representative, and the statistics are staggering as far as how we are not flourishing at work from a well-being standpoint, and that we do need to be spending much more time and attention on that. So I will say that piece of it, but I've also seen some really beautiful efforts from companies realizing that the standard well-being program of, hey, let's everybody do a 5K is not working anymore. We are doing a shift toward better addressing mental health, emotional health, individualizing health programs so that I might want to go and do an inline skating event and they might want to go and do a meditation retreat, and we should be supported across that. And so I'm seeing some nice shifts in that direction. We have a very, very long way to go. And I also could not complete this part of the topic without saying we cannot rely on the corporations to do all of the work. There is a level of personal responsibility with each and every single employee that your boss is not going to drink that water for you, is not going to go and do that gym visit for you. We have to come to terms with it is our own personal responsibility to take action. And sometimes that's really difficult because either the people around us or the circumstances sometimes push back a little bit. But it's too important. Your value to the world is dependent on how you operate, and how you operate is a direct relationship to how well you are.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. When you spoke with this person from Gallup or listened to that person who was speaking, did they touch on the number of people that are depressed? Because it seems to me that this is much, much more than before COVID, and the impact of COVID is still there.
Yeah, there was a combination of things. I do not have the stats in front of me, but just said very generally and paraphrased, depression and anxiety way up. Isolation is way up. Sort of the fallout from being overly isolated. There's a lot of support that's shifting and moving in that direction. And I would say one, not specific stat, but one trend to look at is that leaders believe they are addressing their employees' well-being to about an 86%. That's paraphrased, but around there. Employees have faith in their leaders' ability to address the well-being at about 40%. So all that's saying is that leaders, you think you're doing a better job than you are because your employees do not believe you have their well-being first and foremost in your mind, and they're not seeing the action, they're not seeing the results. So if you think you're doing an incredible job, just a little self-reflection, maybe take some polls and check in with your teams, because the data is coming out of Gallup saying, no, the employees don't believe you actually are doing a great job. So you may be different, but that's the trend. So we just want to be aware of that.
Interesting. And also, I totally agree with you. It's like, if you expect the government to do everything for you, wrong. Don't expect the leader of the business to do everything for you and take charge of your own wellness.
Yeah, and it's sobering, that level of personal responsibility in a world that is so stressful and so toxic and so much to take care of when it comes to ourselves. And we probably have kids at home and we got to take care of them and we've got a job. It's really overwhelming. But again, I remember in one of your episodes, David Stevens referred to the oxygen mask, right? It's such a cliche by this point, but the idea that if you are not investing in yourself, those in the circle nearest you will suffer. those in the next circle, your coworkers and your job, also will suffer. And so it is an absolute priority to make sure that you are doing whatever you can to help support your health. And simple strategies, and we can jump into a couple simple strategies if you'd like to, Eric. I love to end with some practical tools.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So I've got a whole bunch. So what I want to say in advance of saying them is do not get overwhelmed. Take one of these suggestions and try it for 2 or 3 weeks. And once it's implemented, come back and listen to the end of this again and then implement something else. But put very simply, I like the idea, we talked about Tim Ferriss's minimal effective dose. And you on one of your episodes was talking about, because you speak a lot to planners and event people and all of that, what can they do in the heat of, a 4-day event? Because very often all of our health practices just go out the window. Well, let's come at it from that vantage point, because if we can do it during an event, we can do it anytime. Okay.
Yep.
So for example, nature supersizes anything. So whether you're meditating or you're moving your body, if you can get out in green space, the data tells us that it refurbishes your battery significantly more than if not done in nature. So add nature, number one. Number two, increase your protein. The data tells us that we as a people are not getting anywhere near enough grams of protein. Well done. And just aim toward that 100-gram mark. That may be very high for you or that may be low for you, but as an average, head toward 100 grams. The next thing is we talked about self-compassion as a foundation to wellness strategy. I consider there's 4 different foundations that I speak on. Self-compassion is one of them. Look into Kristen Neff's work. She's got a ton of resources on her website, free little inventories you can take, lots of reading, and learn about what self-compassion means and how to practice it. And then you also talked on one of your episodes about morning routine. And I love this because everyone just rolls their eyes when you say morning routine, because nobody has time for half an hour of journaling. And then I'm going to do a half an hour of a meditation. And then I'm going to drink a green smoothie and a matcha tea. And then I'm going to go do my yoga. Nobody has time for that. And so I like to teach clients to do a 5-5-5. So 5 minutes of journaling or affirmations, 5 minutes of any kind of movement. It could be a dance to a song. It could be yoga, could be jumping jacks or anything like that. And then 5 minutes of breath work. And so movement, meditation or breath work, and then journaling or some kind of affirmation, 5-5-5. And so that is a beautiful morning routine, just 15 minutes. And it's a great way to start your day. And back to sleep, what you do in the morning will deeply impact the quality of your sleep that night. So that's something that you can do. So those things I think are really key. Nature supersizes anything, increase your protein, work on your self-compassion, and take your morning routine and just start with 15 minutes of 3 different things and then see how that goes. You can grow it from there if you can.
I love everything you said. And for me, the importance of morning routine is very simple. Let's be honest. If you don't do it in the morning, there's a little chance you're actually going to do it anytime in the day.
Truth.
Oh, I'm going to do it after lunch. Oh, no, I'm going to do it in the afternoon. I'm going to do it just before going to bed. And the day is gone.
And one other thing I just want to say in regard to some of these new habits that we're talking about is the importance of anchoring it to something you're already doing. So as a chiropractor, I used to hand out a tennis ball to new patients and say, go home and massage those spots with the tennis ball that we just worked on. And sure enough, they'd come back and it was under the seat in their car. And so I started saying, go home and put this tennis ball right next to your toothbrush. When you brush your teeth, I want you to get against the wall and roll the tennis ball on the muscles that we worked on today. 80% compliance. So when we anchor a new behavior to something we're already doing, you can call it habit stacking or habit linking, it amplifies significantly the chance of your success. So that's one thing I want to make sure we're understanding is that these are great things to do. Make it easy on yourself, link it to something you're already doing, and you'll have a much greater chance of yoo-hoo.
That's awesome. Heather, I'd like to finish the conversation talking about something that is also dear, not to my heart or my mind, whatever you call it, but and it's one of your topic as well, is resilience. My wife's grandmother used to say, God, protect me from enduring the things that I don't know I would have the courage to endure. And I love that. Now we obviously have, the environment, what's going on in the world, the stress, the anxiety. How do you inspire people when it comes to resilience? Is that
Mhm.
with your own story and what happened in your life? But why is it important to be resilient, and how could people be resilient?
I'm going to just mention a couple of things because it's a 90-minute keynote. So we won't go 90 minutes, but just a couple of things to think of is that in this culture, at least, because it's the one that I live in, we understand resilience is bouncing back, pull up your bootstraps. And that is not what resilience is at all. It's the ability to assimilate what's happened, learn, and move forward. And so how do we do those three things, right? How do we process? How do we learn from it? And how do we move forward? So it's that, whether it was a bad email you had or you're in a war-torn country. And so, and those things will happen very differently in those two situations. I'm not saying that they
Sure.
would be the same, but the 3 points of that are definitely important. I also think there are resilience building strategies that we don't think of as resilience building strategies that are easily employed, free, and we can do anytime. One of those, for example, is just movement. You know, if we look at the animal kingdom, what do animals do when they get stressed? They shake everything off. And so we can move some of this stress that's building up inside of us. We can get it out of our bodies through movement. I will tell you, I was sitting at lunch with a friend in Palm Springs 2 weekends ago, and he said to me, because I had left the group to go and do a workout and come back, he said, you know, why do you work out almost every day? Like, you know, he was kind of going down a path of, it seems like a bit much. I said, it is the only way I can move stress through my body. It's the reason I work out. It's not for big muscles or anything like that. Oh, that's a lovely side effect. It's to process stress. And so movement is so essential. So that's one. Another one I think that is really key is joy. And Richard Hanson's work on happiness and joy, where he talks about when we just stare at something that's bringing us joy, and if we stare at it for 15 seconds or longer, it actually processes into long-term memory. We're naturally wired to take in negative and threatening situations into long-term, but anything else just goes through the sieve and is gone. But if we can start to collect moments of joy, process them into long-term memory, and then have them to be able to recall to help drop some happy hormones, then that can be an incredible resilience building tool. So what I do with clients is I have them create a joy folder on their phone, and I have them put in those it's not about the photo, it's about what it triggers as the experience for you. So I have a picture of an elephant tusk trying to eat my necklace from Thailand. That was one of the most powerful, beautiful moments I've ever had in my life. She was just the sweetest thing. And it just, talking about it brings up the chemistry in my body that's conducive to happiness and joy and dissipating cortisol. And so those are just two examples. There's plenty of things that we can do that can help fill that resilience bucket. But one final thing in regard to resilience, if we want to fill that bucket of resilience, we have to make sure there are no holes in the bottom. And the holes in the bottom are where we're leaking our energy unnecessarily and unknowingly. Spending energy on time and things that, if we could shore that up, then we can really truly start to build some resilience. Things like decision fatigue, context shifting, toxic relationships, multitasking, things like that cost us our energy. And then that's very tricky to build up our resilience if we're just completely energetically depleted all the time. So that's a whole other piece, but I wanted to mention it so that people have an awareness of, oh, my energy is a limited resource. I need to be paying attention to where I am dumping it unnecessarily.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this today. How do people get in touch with you?
My website is wellfitandfed.com. That's a great spot to find me. If you want to message me, and I love these podcasts because I meet lots of new friends from people who've been listening. Please message me. I would love to hear from you on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every day, and so that's a great place to message. And it's under Heather Denniston, LinkedIn. And I'd love to hear from any of your listeners.
Wonderful. My last question for today. Anybody's listening, want to help you. What is it that you're trying to achieve this year, and how could anyone help you in what you're trying to do?
Yeah, one of my primary goals is to get on 24 stages, and I'm only at 9 booked. So I've got some work to do. And so I'm sort of semi-retired. I'm working when I want to work, but that is a goal that I have to accomplish this year. And so I love to get on stages. And if anyone feels like well-being strategy is good for their group or their team, just message me. I'll tell you all about it.
Wonderful. Heather, thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting you in person one day in the future.
Me too, Eric. Absolutely. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. You have an incredible podcast and a long litany of fantastic people who have been guesting. I'm honored to have been selected, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Heather, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and sharing some of the strategies that we can put in place to improve our wellness, resilience, and obviously the impact on our lives and business success. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to connect with me, please do so on LinkedIn, or you can find a lot of information pertaining to running, growing your business better on my website, www.eventbusinessformula.com. And if you learned anything today, please share this episode with your network. Thank you. Bye-bye.